Hello, I'm Dr. William Schlosser. You know me as an economist. You may also know me as an ecologist. But more than anything, you're going to know me as an educator. I'm Dr. Bill, and I welcome you to my classroom. In 2024, Harley-Davidson, an iconic American motorcycle manufacturer, employs over 5,000 people and generates around $5 billion in revenues. Just as the U.S. economy has experienced long-term economic growth and navigated through a series of short-run business cycles, Harley-Davidson has experienced long-run growth and has become sometimes negatively affected by these cycles. The company has continuously adapted to changes in consumer preferences, technological advances, and economic fluctuations. During the Great Recession of 2007 to 2009, Harley-Davidson faced significant challenges as consumer spending on luxury items, including motorcycles, plummeted. The company responded by restructuring its operations, streamlining production, and focusing on its core brand strengths. As the economy recovered, Harley-Davidson introduced new models and expanded its reach into international markets, leading to a general recovery in sales and profitability. But recently, Harley-Davidson has also been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent economic downturns. The company adapted by accelerating its digital transformation, enhancing its core e-commerce capabilities, and introducing innovative products like electric motorcycles. These strategic moves have helped Harley-Davidson navigate the current economic cycle and position itself for future growth. This example provides a contemporary and relevant case study on how a well-known American company has navigated through the economic cycles, aligning well with the theme of Chapter 7 Bankruptcy on Economic Growth, the Financial System, and Business Cycles. In the previous chapter, we delved into employment dynamics, including the roles of employee training, technological advancements, and the influence of business cycles. Now we will take a closer look at the business cycle itself and its profound impact on the economy. The business cycle is characterized by alternating periods of expansion, growth, and contraction, recession. Understanding how these cycles work is crucial for predicting economic trends and making informed decisions. In this chapter, we will discuss how various factors such as government policies, consumer behavior, and global events contribute to economic strengths or weaknesses. We will also examine the short-term and long-term economic projections, exploring how different strategies and reactions can help mitigate the effects of economic downturns and capitalize on periods of growth. By understanding these concepts, we can better appreciate the complexities of economic growth and importance of strategic planning in achieving a resilient economy.
Some call stories of hard times anecdotal, right? Particularly on Wall Street, they don't necessarily take them seriously, although often they do show up later on Wall Street spreadsheets. And I've been thinking of some of the data, like last week, that beige book. It noted that on Broadway, 5 Broadway theaters remain out of use. I mean, Broadway? Are you serious? The richest city in America, in the world maybe, and 5 theaters is still empty? So what's going on there? And then yesterday in the Business Insider, I'm reading this article about the great concert ticket bust. It mentioned J-Lo. It mentioned a whole lot of other big-time artists, Cardi B, Justin Timberlake, Pink. What the heck is going on? So I'm thinking maybe, to Brian's point, maybe we just kind of simply ran out of money. So this is the stimmies. Remember all the stimmy checks came in, and at one point we had $2.1 trillion in excess savings? Well, we started to spend it. Who got all the money? Taylor Swift and Beyonce. There's nothing left, folks. I'm sorry, JLo, but they took your money. So I want to bring in Wall Street Horizons VP of Research, Christine Short. All right, Christine. So today is another kind of example that Five Below, they reported the stock is getting hammered because honestly, I think $5 is too much for a lot of folks. Think about this. We had a closeout store, Ollie's, which has prices, really dirt cheap, even cheaper than Five Below. They did extraordinarily well. What's going on with the consumer?
Yeah, it's been a really mixed bag this retail earnings season, right? There's winners and losers. It's not necessarily whole sectors of the retail are doing well and some aren't. It's dollar stores. You're pointing out Five Below. You got to think about what segment of the dollar store landscape is Five Below in. Well, it's more discretionary, just like Dollar Tree. They're not selling necessities, right?
Right.
They're selling kitschy things to throw a party, home good, stuff like that.
Right.
If you look at the other end, Dollar General's done pretty well, although they reported last week and the stock kind of fell. But they sell more consumable goods. So food, cleaning products, personal health care, they've overall been doing better. But look, they've all been impacted by inflation. They had to raise prices. Five Below CEO talked about this today.
Right.
And their lower income consumer doesn't want to pay those prices, so they're going elsewhere. They did gain the higher income consumer that's trading down,
right.
But Dollar General did a good job at lowering prices, but now their margin is suffering. So there's really no way for these guys to win. And one more comment, Walmart's stealing market share from these guys. So they have the value. That's what consumers are looking for. They're looking for a value play. They have the product mix, and their shelves are stocked. And some of the dollar stores haven't been able to do that, haven't been able to hold on to employees. So that's where they're going.
Some of those places you drive out, they're a hot mess.
Yep.
You mentioned the mix in retail. What's amazing to me is that and the stocks that have worked out in retail, they're sort of they have a core competency, like they sell only blue jeans or blue jeans and T-shirts, right? Mm-hmm. I'm thinking of or Abercrombie and Fitch, right?
Yep.
Or Gap stores, right? So also what they have in common, you can go in there with a few bucks. You don't have to go in there with a couple $1,000s. You can go in there with $200 and walk out with a couple of bags, maybe. Yeah. Is that the formula right now?
Yeah, those were some surprises last week, right? In this environment, who would think Gap, who hasn't been doing very well, Abercrombie Fitch, Foot Locker, that's another one. They sell sneakers, sneaker sales were up. Those are three that no one was really expecting to do as well as they did. But like you said, the consumer, again, looking for value, which some of those were promotional sales, but a lot were full price. Looking for the right product mix and inventory. You have to have stuff in stock. Look what happened to Lululemon. They had some of the right product mix, but they didn't have everything in stock. So the most popular products were sold out. Consumers couldn't get their hands on them, so they're going to lose out. And so I think those three names you mentioned that reported last week, they all had the right mix. So consumers aren't spending as much. They're being very selective, but if they find what they want, they're still spending.
I got less than a minute to go. The jobs report tomorrow. How are you modeling it? What are you looking for? What are you bracing for?
Look, we've gotten a lot of jobs data this week. It's all kind of trending in the same direction, right? Private payrolls out yesterday came in cooler than expected. You had initial jobless claims up a little bit higher than expected. And then you also had the BLS's job opening report from April showing there's the least amount of jobs openings in 3 years. So look, tomorrow economists are looking for 190,000 non-farm job payrolls. Will that come in later? I think all of the data is sort of trending in that direction. We're also going to be looking for wage growth. It came down to 3.9%. We want to see those numbers, right? We want to see numbers come down just a little bit. Bad news is good news in this environment. You can see the markets seem to be kind of in a wait and hold moment to see what we see tomorrow. Is that going to correlate to rate cuts
unemployment
in the fall?
number? Could we get a four handle on unemployment?
I think so. Yeah, I think we were at 3.9 last month, so maybe that ticks up a little. Maybe wage growth ticks down a little, and I think the probability of rate cuts coming in September and December, those are the expectations right now for quarter basis point cut in those 2 months. I think the investors.
That becomes a rally cry.
Absolutely.
Christine, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
In our previous discussions, we touched upon the importance of the gross domestic product, GDP, as a core indicator in macroeconomics. We also discussed the role of employment and inflation in building the strength of the economy. In this chapter, we will delve deeper into the country's economic health, particularly through the lens of a long-run economic growth. Long-run economic growth refers to the process by which increasing production enhances the average standard of living over extended periods. This growth is best measured by real GDP per capita, which adjusts for changes in the price level to provide a per-person perspective on economic output. To illustrate, consider the graph on the screen depicting the real GDP per capita. Since 1900, the U.S. has seen its real GDP per capita increase more than eightfold. This means that, on average, Americans today can purchase more than 8 times as many goods and services as they could over a century ago. This growth highlights the dynamic nature of the U.S. economy, capable of expanding production faster than the population growth, leading to improved living standards. A robust economy experiences cycles of expansion and contraction, known as the business cycle. While these cycles vary in length and intensity, the overarching trend of increased productivity drives long-term growth. In high-income countries like the United States, Western Europe, and Japan, citizens generally expect their standard of living to improve over time due to these continuous productive gains. In summary, understanding long-run economic growth and its measurement through the real GDP per capita is crucial. It allows us to appreciate the progress made in improving living standards and the ongoing potential for further economic development. On this slide, we compare the life expectancy of birth in 4 countries, the USA, United Kingdom, France, and India, between the years of 1900 and 2024. As we can see, there has been a dramatic increase in life expectancy across all these countries. The USA saw an increase from 47.3 years in 1900 to 78.9 years in 2024. The United Kingdom improved from 46.3 years to 81.2 years. France from 47.0 years to 83.5 years. And India from 24.0 years to 70.4 years. These improvements reflect advancements in healthcare, sanitation, nutrition, and overall living conditions. An excellent measure of economic prosperity is the amount of time we can spend on leisure. As our lifespan increases and we become more productive, we can devote less time to work and more time to leisure activities. This chart, based on estimates from Nobel Prize winner Robert Vogel, shows the change in lifetime discretionary hours, paid work hours, and leisure hours from 1880 to 2040. Over these years, improvements in productivity and lifespan are expected to continue enhancing the quality of life for Americans. As the economy expands or contracts, it is measured in the context of GDP. During economic expansions, the GDP grows, and during contracting periods, it gets smaller. Generally, the percent change in GDP is expressed as the speed of economic changes. This rate of change expresses the economic changes across all industries and the population in general. For example, from 2021 to 2023, the real GDP of the United States increased from $22,996 billion to $25,461 billion. The table shows the annual growth rates for these years, with 5.7% growth in 2021, 5.6% in 2022, and 4.8% in 2023. This annual rate of growth, or contraction, provides a measurement of the changes in the GDP and, by extension, expresses how individuals are faring. If the economy does not grow at a rate at least as fast as the ratio of the population growth, then overall the GDP per capita contracts. Conversely, when GDP increases faster than the population growth, the GDP per capita grows, improving the overall quality of life. This concept is critical because it ties economic health to personal well-being. For example, as the working age extends to longer careers, our nation grows as children are born and enter the job market, and people immigrate into the country to fill jobs. The economy must grow at least as fast as the population growth rate to ensure that the standard of living improves or at least stays stable. Understanding and calculating growth rates allows us to measure the economy's performance and make informed decisions about policies and strategies to maintain or enhance economic stability and growth. The growth rate of real GDP, or real GDP per capita, during a specific year is equal to the percentage change from the previous year. To find the average annual growth rate over long periods, we use a formula rather than calculating each year's growth rate and averaging them. The formula is previous real GDP times the quantity 1 plus G, quantity raised to the T, equals current real GDP. Here, G is equal to the growth rate, and T is the number of time periods between the previous and the current period. And to easily determine how long it will take for an economic variable to double, we use the rule of 70. Okay, now this rule states the number of years to double is equal to 70 divided by the growth rate. For example, with a growth rate of 3.5%, it will take approximately 20 years for the variable to double. This simple rule demonstrates the powerful compounding growth rates over time. Understanding growth rates is crucial because small differences in these rates can lead to significant changes in the standard of living over time. Now, for instance, if you invest money at a 3.5% annual compound rate of return, it will take 20 years to double your investment, as calculated by 70 divided by 3.5. If the growth rate of return increases to 7%, your investment will double in just 10 years, showing how the higher growth rates can accelerate financial gains. The rule of 70 is a handy tool, not just for economists, but for anyone looking to understand the impact of growth rates on investments and economic variables. Increases in real GDP per capita depend on changes in labor productivity, which is the quantity of goods and services that can be produced by each worker during 1 hour of work. Economists usually measure labor productivity as the output per hour of work to avoid fluctuations in the length of the workday and the fraction of the population employed. Economists believe that two key factors determine labor productivity: the quantity of capital per hour worked and the levels of technology. Be careful about the use of capital in economics. We are not referring to capital as a measure of money or investment. Capital refers to manufactured goods that are used in the production of other goods and services. Think of capital in this context as the materials businesses have to enable enhanced worker productivity. It is the computers made available to office workers, the automated assembly line to move new automobile frames past assemblers in manufacture, and the software that empowers new solutions for complex challenges. Increases in real GDP per capita are largely driven by changes in labor productivity, which is the quantity of goods and services that can be produced by each worker within 1 hour of work. Economists typically measure the labor productivity as output per hour of work to avoid fluctuations caused by variations in the length of the workday or the proportion of the population employed. Economists identify two key factors to determine labor productivity. One, the quantity of capital per hour worked. Capital includes manufactured goods such as machinery, tools, and equipment that are used to produce other goods and services. This also encompasses human capital, which refers to the accumulated knowledge and skills workers possess. The more capital available for each worker, the more productive they will be. For example, a construction worker using advanced machinery can complete tasks much faster than one relying solely on manual labor. Similarly, a well-educated and skilled workforce can utilize technology more effectively, leading to higher productivity. Technological advancements play a crucial role in boosting labor productivity. This includes improvements in physical capital, such as new machinery or software, and innovations in production processes. For instance, automation and artificial intelligence can significantly enhance productivity by allowing tasks to be completed more quickly and accurately. Entrepreneurs are vital in this aspect, as they innovate and find new ways to combine production factors, leading to better or more affordable products. They drive the adoption of new technologies and methods, continuously pushing the boundaries of what can be achieved in various industries. Together, increases in capital per hour worked and technological change form the backbone of labor productivity growth. By investing in modern equipment and fostering an environment that encourages innovation, economies can achieve sustainable improvements and productivity, ultimately leading to long-term economic growth. India's transition from being a protectorate territory of England until the independence in 1947 marked the beginning of a long journey towards economic growth. Initially, growth rates were very low, and the nation remained desperately poor. However, in 1991, the Indian government initiated a series of market-based reforms, reducing regulations and central planning, which catalyzed significant economic progress. From 1948 to 1991, the growth rate was slow but began to pick up momentum post-reforms in the early 1990s. Between 1992 and 2002, India saw moderate growth, which accelerated between 2003 and 2012. By 2024, the growth rate has continued at a rapid pace. In 2014, India's GDP per capita was $1,233, up from $929 in 2005, reflecting a growth rate of 5.4% per year over the decade. As of the most recent data, India's GDP per capita has continued to rise, driven by advances in technology, education, and infrastructure. Maintaining such high growth rates is challenging, but with ongoing reforms, the integration of the rule of law, protection of property rights, and national support for entrepreneurship, India can continue to achieve positive growth. The question remains whether India can sustain its rapid growth, but the potential is certainly there, with the right policies and continued development efforts. Potential GDP is a level of real GDP attained when all firms are producing at their full capacity. This capacity considers normal hours and normal-sized workforce. The factors that influence potential GDP include the expansion of the labor force, acquisition of more capital stock, and the creation of new technologies. From 1949 to 2023, the potential real GDP in the United States grew at an average rate of about 3.2% per year. However, the actual level of the real GDP fluctuates around this potential as the economy moves through various business cycles. The recession of 2007 to 2009 created a significant gap between potential and actual GDP, which took several years to narrow. A similar pattern occurred during the COVID-19 recession. As shown in the graph from Fred, real GDP fell below potential GDP during these periods of economic downturn. However, by Q2 2021, real GDP had mostly realigned with potential GDP. The recovery of these recessions highlights the resilience of the U.S. economy and its ability to return to its potential output. As we continue to navigate through economic cycles, the factors influencing potential GDP will remain critical in understanding long-term economic growth. The financial system is crucial for economic growth as it enables firms to finance their expansion. While firms can use retained earnings to reinvest profits back into the company, this is often insufficient for significant growth. To bridge this gap, firms turn to the financial system, which considers both financial markets and financial intermediaries. Financial markets include stock and bond markets, where firms can raise capital directly from investors. On the other hand, financial intermediaries such as banks facilitate the flow of funds from savers, households, to borrowers, firms. The financial system acts as a conduit channeling savings from households to productive investments by firms. This process supports the expansion of businesses and fuels broader economic growth by optimizing the allocation of financial resources. For instance, firms issue stocks and bonds to gather capital from investors through financial markets. Simultaneously, banks play a vital role by collecting deposits from households and providing loans to firms for their expansion needs. Economic growth significantly depends on the efficiency of the financial system. It powers the circular flow model, driving the interactions within the economy and ensuring that resources are available where they can be most productively used. Financial markets are crucial components for our economy, where financial securities, such as stocks and bonds, are actively bought and sold. A financial security is essentially a document stating the terms under which funds are exchanged between a willing buyer and a willing seller. Stocks and bonds are securities that represent partial ownership in a company, where bonds are promises to repay a fixed amount of money, functioning as loans from households to firms. Financial intermediaries play a vital role in bridging the gap between savers and borrowers. These intermediaries, including banks, mutual funds, pension funds, and insurance companies. They collect funds from savers and lend them to those in need of capital. For example, a mutual fund pools money from savers and invests them in a diversified portfolio of financial securities. The system of financial markets and intermediaries not only facilitates investment and growth, but also enables individuals to participate in the economic activities of businesses. It's a core aspect of our commercial business framework and distinguishes our economy from others that may not operate with the same principles of free markets and stability. Financial markets are crucial arenas where financial securities, such as stocks and bonds, are traded. These securities serve as documents detailing the terms under which funds are exchanged, from buyer to seller. Stocks represent partial ownership in a firm, while bonds are promises to repay a fixed amount of funds, functioning as loans from households to firms. Stocks and bonds form the backbone of our commercial business format, enabling individuals to actively participate in economic activities of businesses. However, this system is not universally shared across all economies. Some nations claim to operate free market economies, but their interpretation of free market and stability can differ vastly from our understanding. To illustrate this, let's examine the Russian Federation. From the mid-1990s to 2002, I had the opportunity to work in the newly independent states of the former Soviet Union for the U.S. Department of State. During this period, the Russian Federation presented itself to the world as having a well-developed financial market, with institutions structured to meet the global standards. Now, in reality, since the breakup of the Soviet Union, Russia has functioned more as a dictatorship than as a democracy, with significant government control over commerce, rather than true free market. These discrepancies between reported and actual economic systems significantly influence the success or failure of government programs and the ability of countries to manage their economic cycles of expansion and contraction. The presence of a genuine free market, characterized by minimal government interventions, is critical for the healthy functioning and growth of an economy. However, in environments where government control dominates, the economic dynamics are fundamentally altered, often hindering the natural progress through business cycles. This example underscores the importance of understanding the true nature of financial systems within the different economic contexts, and highlights the challenges faced by countries transitioning from centralized control to market-based economies. The financial system plays a critical role in facilitating economic growth by providing three key services to savers and borrowers. First, risk sharing is essential. By allowing investors to spread the money across various assets, the financial system helps reduce the overall risk. This diversification ensures that even if one investment underperforms, others may perform well, balancing out the overall return. This is particularly important for encouraging investment as it allows for higher expected returns with managed risk. Second, liquidity is a vital service. It refers to the ease with which investors can convert the assets into cash. A liquid financial system ensures that savers can quickly access their money when needed, without significant loss in value. This liquidity is crucial for both individual financial stability and broader economic flexibility, as it allows for smoother financial transactions and economic activities. Third, the financial system provides information. The prices of financial securities, like stocks and bonds, reflects the collective beliefs of investors about the future revenue streams and risks associated with these securities. This aggregation of information is crucial because it directs funds to the most promising and productive uses. Efficient financial markets ensure that capital flows to the firms that are most likely to generate future growth, driving overall economic development. By understanding these services, risk sharing, liquidity, and information, we can better appreciate the fundamental role of the financial system in supporting economic growth and stability. In our discussions of GDP and its components, we now delve into the relationship between savings and investment. The core idea is that the total value of saving in an economy must match the total value of investment. This linkage is crucial in understanding how funds flow within the economy and how resources are allocated to drive economic growth. Let's start with a fundamental equation for GDP, which is the sum of consumption, C, investment, I, government purchases, G, and net exports, NX. For simplicity, we consider a closed economy without exports or imports, simplifying our equation to Y equals C plus I plus G. By rearranging this equation some more, we isolate investment. I equals Y minus C minus G. This expression tells us that investment in a closed economy equals the total income minus consumption and government purchases. This relationship forms the basis of understanding how the economy channels resources into investment, which in turn fuels economic growth and development. In essence, the total savings within the economy, consisting of both private saving by households and public saving by the government, must equal the total investment. This balance ensures that the funds saved are effectively used for productive investments, driving the overall economic progress. By grasping this fundamental principle, we gain insights into the dynamics of saving, investment, and their impact on economic stability and growth. Let's delve into the concept of savings, which is crucial for understanding the financial health of both households and the government. Savings are composed of two main components, private saving and public saving. Private savings, S private, refer to the income households retain after meeting their consumption, C, and tax, T, obligations. Households earn income by supplying factors of production to firms, Y, and receiving transfer payments, TR, from the government. The formula for private savings is S private equals Y plus TR minus C minus T. On the other hand, public saving, S public, represents the government's savings. This is calculated as the difference between tax revenue, T, and government spending, which includes both government purchases, G, and transfer payments, TR. The formula for public savings is S public equals T minus G minus TR. By combining these, we can determine the total savings, S, in the economy. S equals S private plus S public, which is equal to Y plus TR minus C minus T plus T minus G minus TR. Altogether, Y minus C minus G. Now, let's summarize the relationship between savings and investment. We have derived that the total value of savings in the economy must equal the total value of investment. This fundamental concept ensures the equilibrium in the financial system, supporting economic stability and growth. Total savings, S, is composed of private saving, S private, which is the total amount of household income that remains after consumption and taxes. S private, that's Y plus TR minus C minus T. Public savings, S public, the government saving, which is the difference between tax revenue and government spending. S public is equal to T minus G minus TR. By combining these, we get S is equal to S private plus S public. S is equal to Y plus TR minus C minus T plus the quantity of T minus G minus TR. Altogether, S is equal to Y minus C minus G. When the government runs a budget deficit, it borrows money by selling treasury bonds, reducing the amount of money available for private investment. Conversely, a budget surplus increases public savings and boosts investment spending, contributing to economic growth. Understanding this balance between saving and investment helps us grasp the broader economic dynamics and the importance of fiscal responsibility for sustainable development.
Let's delve into a classic literary example that highlights the dynamics of savings and economic impact. Ebenezer Scrooge, a character from Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, epitomizes extreme frugality and miserliness. Scrooge's approach to money management, hoarding wealth and avoiding expenditure, made his last name a byword for stinginess and social hoarding. In the context of economics, Scrooge's behavior offers a unique perspective on the role of savings in an economy. While his extreme saving habits initially suggest economic stagnation due to reduced spending, the transformation of Scrooge at the end of the story reveals a deeper truth. When he begins to spend and invest in others, the positive impact on the community is immediate and profound. Scrooge's story reminds us that money, when circulated within the economy, fuels growth, creates jobs, and improves living standards. It illustrates the balance between saving and spending, emphasizing that while saving is crucial for future security, spending drives current economic activity. By examining Scrooge's journey from a miser to a benefactor, we can appreciate the broader implications of financial decisions. His transformation demonstrates that economic health depends on a balance between saving wisely and spending generously to support communal prosperity.
The market for loanable funds refers to the interaction of borrowers and lenders that determines the market interest rate and the quantity of loanable funds exchanged. The demand for loanable funds is determined by the willingness of firms to borrow money and to engage in new investment projects. The supply of loanable funds is determined by the willingness of households to save and the extent of government savings or dissavings. The higher the interest rate, the greater the reward for saving and the larger the amount of funds that households will save. This model helps simplify the complex web of financial interactions, giving us a clearer picture of how savings and investments balance out in the economy. The supply of loanable funds is determined by the willingness of households to save and the extent of government saving or dissaving. The higher the interest rate, the greater the reward for saving and the larger the amount of funds households will save. Both borrowers and lenders focus on the real interest rate they will receive or pay. Thus, equilibrium in the loanable funds market determines the real interest rate. This concept is essential as it underpins the flow of money in the economy, ensuring that funds are available for businesses to invest and grow, while also providing households with returns for their savings. The equilibrium point, where the demand and supply curves intersect, reflects the balance of these forces and indicates the prevailing real interest rate and quantity of loanable funds in the market. Technological advancements often make investments more profitable for firms. This leads to an increase in the demand for loanable funds as firms seek to capitalize on new opportunities. As the demand for loanable funds rises, it pushes up the equilibrium interest rate. Consequently, the higher interest rate attracts more savings, increasing the quantity of loanable funds available in the economy. However, this process also means that when the government borrows extensively to finance its budget deficit, it can lead to crowding out. This phenomenon occurs because of increased government borrowing rises the interest rates, which in turn makes it more expensive for firms to borrow funds for investment, potentially stifling economic growth. When the government incurs a budget deficit, it needs to borrow money to cover its expenses. To do this, the government sells bonds to households. This action pulls funds away from being available for private firms for their investment needs, effectively reducing the supply of loanable funds in the market. As of this reduced supply, the equilibrium real interest rate increases. Higher interest rates make borrowing more expensive for firms, leading to a decrease in the quantity of funds they can loan. This phenomenon, where government borrowing leading to higher interest rates and reduced private investment, is known as crowding out. Crowding out is significant because it illustrates how government fiscal policies can influence private sector activities. By borrowing heavily, the government can inadvertently make it more difficult for businesses to obtain the financing they need for expansion, thus potentially slowing down economic growth. In practice, the effect of government budget deficits and surpluses on the equilibrium interest rate is relatively small. For instance, one study found that increasing borrowing by 1% of GDP would only increase the real interest rates by 0.003 percentage points. This seemingly minimal impact can be attributed to the influence of global markets. Interest rates are shaped by international capital flows, meaning that even substantial borrowing by the government is relatively minor on the global scale. Let's examine these figures to understand how government actions, both fiscal and monetary, impact the overall economy. At first, consider a scenario where the U.S. government increases the budget deficit. To finance this deficit, the government borrows money from the financial markets. This borrowing reduces the availability of loanable funds to other borrowers, effectively causing a leftward shift in the supply curve of loanable funds. The new equilibrium, where the supply and demand curves intersect, occurs at a higher real interest rate and a reduced quantity of loanable funds available for private investment. This process is known as crowding out. When the government borrows more, it competes with private businesses for available funds, driving up interest rates. Higher interest rates make borrowing more expensive for businesses, potentially slowing down their growth and expansion. Next, let's consider the opposite scenario, where there is a decrease in the demand for loanable funds. This could happen due to the reduced investment opportunities or lower consumer confidence. The demand curve shifts to the left, leading to a new equilibrium with a lower real interest rate and a smaller quantity of loanable funds. This situation often leads to increased savings but less borrowing and investment, which can slow economic growth. In both scenarios, it's important to recognize that the federal deficit is only part of the equation. Commercial enterprises might have access to low rates but may hesitate to borrow due to broader systemic fiscal and monetary challenges within the U.S. economy. Understanding these shifts helps us appreciate the delicate balance in the market for loanable funds and the broader economic implications of government borrowing and fiscal policies. Since at least the early 19th century, the U.S. economy has experienced business cycles that consist of alternating periods of expanding and contracting economic activity. During the expansion phase of a business cycle, production, employment, and income are rising. This period of expansion ends with the business cycle peak. Following the business cycle peak, production, employment, and income decline during the recession phase of the cycle. The recession comes to an end with a business cycle trough, after which another period of expansion begins. Although the average American has experienced a tremendous increase in the standard of living over the past century, real GDP per capita did not increase every year. The U.S. economy has been through several cycles of expansion and contraction, or growth and recession. Look at these cycles in the GDP through time to recognize expansion cycles shown as increasing GDP from year to year. When it reaches a high point and begins the decline again, that high point is called a peak. It can be difficult to identify the peak before the decline starts. When the cycle drops to its lowest point and begins a recovery, the low point is called the trough. Stylistically, it shows the full business cycle pattern from peak to trough and back into recovery cycle. Moving beyond the idealized smooth lines, we consider the Great Recession of 2007 to 2009. Notice on this chart that the expansion of GDP was still evident in 2006 to 2007, only identifiable as the peak when in late 2007 GDP started to fall. The recession was declared over in 2009 because the trough was indicated. However, it did not mean the recession was fully recovered. It marked the beginning of the recovery process. We were well into 2011 before the level of economic growth achieved pre-recession levels. This post-Great Recession period clearly shows the phases of the business cycle: expansion, peak, recession, and trough. It serves as a strong example of these concepts, illustrating how a significant economic downturn can impact real GDP and the prolonged nature of recovery. The federal government does not officially decide when a recession begins and when it ends. Most economists accept the decisions of the Business Cycle Dating Committee of the National Bureau of Economic Research. The NBER is fairly slow in announcing business cycle dates because it takes time to gather and analyze economic statistics. Recessions are generally announced only after the recovery has started, meaning the recession has officially ended. Firms that expand during a contraction in the economy are taking a long-term view of business growth, making strategic plans to buy low and be in a strong position to sell when the economy expands again. This has been practiced by several firms with successful outcomes. During the COVID-19 recession, many tech companies invested heavily in remote work technologies and infrastructure. The decision paid off significantly by 2022, showcasing the effectiveness of strategic expansion during economic downturns. People often ask economists for predictions about the future of the macroeconomy. Forecasts about the economy's future, even from experts, are not unlike a football writer's predictions of who will play in the next Super Bowl. The prediction can seem well-reasoned and logical, but it is hardly foolproof. Certain statistical cities tend to move in a similar way through all business cycles. Knowledge of these cities and their tendencies can provide some insights to future business cycle movements. The Conference Board, a not-for-profit organization, establishes monthly updates of what is called the Index of Leading Economic Indicators. The index is a weighted average of 10 statistical series that usually lead or begin turning upward or downward before the overall economy does. Because not all components of the index turn before the business cycle hits a peak or trough, movements in the index are more reliable than movements in any one of its components. The leading U.S. index predicts the 6-month growth rate of the coincident index. In addition to the coincident index, the models include other variables that lead the economy: state-level housing permits, state initial unemployment insurance claims, delivery times from the Institute for Supply Management Manufacturing Survey, and the interest rate spread between the 10-year U.S. Treasury bond and the 3-month Treasury bill. In this figure, recognize the series peaked in December 2003, fell, then again peaked in August 2005, still 3.5 years before the trough was reached in January 2009. These indicators can give an early warning to changes in the current cycle. Harley-Davidson produces motorcycles, which are considered durable goods. As such, their sales are strongly affected by recessions. A figure from Fred shows real GDP from 2000 to 2024. The chart of retail sales of motor vehicles and parts dealers for the same period. The chart shows that the entire motorcycle industry was particularly hard hit by the recession of 2007 to 2009 and in 2020. When a recession hits, consumers typically reduce their spending due to concerns about their current and future incomes. However, not all goods are affected equally. Consumers generally continue to purchase non-durable goods like food and clothing, but purchase of durable goods, which are expected to last for 3 years or more, are more strongly affected. Durable goods include items like furniture, appliances, and automobiles, including motorcycles. Harley-Davidson, a leading producer of motorcycles, falls into this category of durable goods. Therefore, their sales are significantly impacted by economic downturns. We can see from the figure, the motorcycle industry experienced a severe downturn during the Great Recession of 2007 to 2009. This period was marked by a substantial decline in real GDP, and the sales of motor vehicles and parts dealers, including motorcycles, plummeted. A continued cycle revealed in 2022 through 2024 with the COVID recession as sales dropped to await economic recovery. Understanding this trend, Harley-Davidson, like other companies in the durable goods sector, must strategize to manage these economic cycles. They may adopt measures to streamline operations, manage inventories, and adjust their marketing strategies to cope with reduced consumer spending during recessions. This example illustrates how business cycles can affect firms differently depending on the nature of their products. Durable goods manufacturers often experience more significant fluctuations in sales compared to non-durable goods providers during economic downturns. Among the most reliable of the leading economic indicators is an index of prices for 500 common stocks. Investors want to buy stock shares when their prices are relatively low and sell shares when the prices are relatively high. During a recession, stock prices fall due to sluggish sales and profits. Interest rates are relatively low during the last months of the recession because of reduced demand for investment. In choosing between buying bonds or stocks, investors will favor stocks when A. Stock prices have fallen to a point where there is a strong possibility of future capital gains, and B. The opportunity cost of buying stocks, the interest rate on bonds, is low. Prices of common stocks will usually begin to rise during the late stages of a business cycle before a business expansion begins. As the economy moves near full employment during an expansion, the situation is reversed. Strong demand for consumer goods and investment will drive prices and interest rates upward. At some point, investors sell stock to realize capital gains and buy bonds rather than stocks to take advantage of high interest rates. The downward movement in stock prices will usually begin before the recession begins. These are some of the indices we watch to give indication of how the economy is performing. The Great Moderation refers to a period of decreased volatility in economic fluctuations that began in the mid-20th century and continued until the early 21st century. During this time, the annual fluctuations in the real GDP were much smaller than the previous periods, reflecting a more stable economic environment. This stability was attributed to improved monetary policy, advancements in technology, better inventory management, and financial innovations. However, the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 abruptly ended this period of moderation. The economic impact of the pandemic caused unprecedented swings in real GDP. In the second quarter of 2020, real GDP plummeted by 28%, as lockdowns and restrictions brought economic activities to a halt. This was followed by a dramatic rebound in the third quarter with a 34.8% increase as some restrictions were lifted and economic activities partially resumed. Despite this recovery, the volatility continued, with real GDP fluctuations between 2% and 3% in the following quarters. These extreme fluctuations highlight the significant impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the economy, contrasting sharply with the relative stability observed during the Great Moderation. The experience of the COVID-19 recession underscores the importance of understanding the factors that contribute to economic stability and the potential vulnerabilities that can lead to sudden disruptions. The U.S. economy has undergone significant transformations over the past century due to globalization and advances in technology. These changes have altered how people interact in the marketplace. One major shift has been the increase in the importance of services in our economy. For instance, the expansion of fast food restaurants has become a staple for many household meals. These are non-durable goods, and their demand was less severely affected during the Great Recession compared to durable goods. The establishment of unemployment insurance and other government transfer programs like Social Security has also played a crucial role. These programs, which didn't exist before the 1930s, have helped consumers maintain their purchasing power during recessions, thereby reducing the severity of economic downturns. Active federal government stabilization policies have also contributed to the Great Moderation. Many economists believe that these policies have been effective in lengthening economic expansions and minimizing the effects of recessions. The debate over the role of government interventions was particularly intense during the Great Recession of 2007 to 2009. Moreover, the stability of the financial system is essential for macroeconomic stability. The Great Depression was exacerbated by financial instability, and similar issues worsened the recessions of 2007 to 2009. Ensuring a stable financial system is crucial for maintaining overall economic stability. The COVID-19 pandemic disrupted the Great Moderation, leading to significant fluctuations in real GDP. The real GDP experienced an unprecedented drop-off of 28% in Q2 2020, followed by a rapid increase of 34.8% in Q3 2020, only to decline again in Q4 2020. These extremes highlight the challenges posed by the pandemic and underscore the importance of resilient economic policies and systems to navigate such unprecedented events. Understanding economic concepts and terminology is essential for grasping the nuances of macroeconomic discussions. Here are some commonplace misconceptions to avoid. Real GDP versus economic growth rate. Real GDP represents the total value of goods and services produced in an economy, adjusted for inflation. In contrast, the economic growth rate measures how much the real GDP has grown or shrunk over a specific period, typically annually or quarterly. Price level versus inflation. The price level is the average of all prices of goods and services in an economy at a particular time. Inflation, however, refers to the rate at which the price level increases over time. It is crucial to differentiate between the static concept of the price level and the dynamic concept of inflation. Savings. Often, discussions on savings focus solely on the private savings, the amount saved by households and businesses. However, it's important to include public savings, that is, government savings, which can significantly impact the overall savings in the economy. Trough versus recession. A trough is a point at which the recession bottoms out and the economy begins to recover. It's the lowest point of the GDP before it starts to rise again. A recession, on the other hand, is the period of economic decline itself. Not distinguishing between these terms can lead to confusion about the state of the economy. Impact of the recession on firms. Recessions do not affect all firms equally. For example, firms producing durable goods like automobiles and Harley-Davidson motorcycles typically experience more significant downturns than those selling non-durable goods like food and clothing. This variability underscores the importance of considering sector-specific dynamics when evaluating economic conditions.